What's going on, everyone? So, per Mark Stein, it looks like JJ Redick is going to be the head coach. It's something I've talked about for the last month or so now. I believe that the Lakers already had their head coach in mind. All the signs, all the signals, everything's kind of highlighted and pointed to hey, JJ Redick, it's his job to lose, right? As long as he doesn't go in there and completely botch the interview, he's more likely than not going to be the head coach. Got the report that the Lakers view him as the next Pat Riley. It's just all signs and signals. There's a big neon sign that says JJ Redick is going to be the head coach. And you're hearing that even further in the Mark Stein report. They're already looking for assistants now alongside JJ Redick, assuming that the reports are true, right? You never really know until it's finalized, until it's completed, right? Once we actually get the official word and the official news, then it's concrete. But again, just based on the trend, the news that continuously gets pumped out, JJ Redick's going to be the head coach, right? Now, as far as what they're trying to do with the coaching staff, I actually like the idea, and it's something that I've talked about heavily, right? Getting some experience, getting some balance on the bench alongside JJ Redick. I know a lot of people aren't super excited about JJ Redick being a head coach, right? I know a lot of people look at it and hey, he doesn't have any experience, right? Look, to me, at the end of the day, it's about who's around him that can give him the best ability for success. You can make that argument for pretty much any head coach, right? Even Frank Vogel, when he became the head coach of the Lakers and we ended up winning a championship in 2020. Look at that bench. I mean, it wasn't just Frank Vogel was this magician as far as head coaches go. No, I mean, he's been fired twice since that 2020 season, right? So, no, it was who he had alongside him that balanced everything out. You had Jason Kidd. You even had a Jared Dudley, who we're going to touch on here in a moment, who, yes, he wasn't a head coach, but he was an extension of the coach on the team, right? He was one of the players that they looked at as an extension, right? And then you also had Phil Handy, right? You had Hollins, right? You had this Avengers of a coaching staff. And it looks like that's what the Lakers are trying to do. None of these none of these potential head coaches have real experience except for Bickerstaff, right? He's the one candidate that has recently emerged that you could go, okay, he has, a couple years of head coaching experience. He's a guy that maybe could fill in. Is Bickerstaff the guy that you think is going to be the guy that leads the charge? I don't. I'm sure there's some people that do. I just don't. And so if you remove him from the equation, all these other candidates, none of them have this plethora of head coaching experience. Most of them have just been assistants for the last, 10 years or whatever, which gives them some level of experience. And I do understand that is hey, at least they have some level of NBA coaching experience where JJ Redick has none. But also, you've seen with a lot of assistants throughout the years that have become head coaches, right? And even Darvin Ham, what happens? They're stuck and set in their ways. I talk about being in this box and they don't know how to go outside of the box because they only know what they were taught. Where somebody like JJ Redick, he wasn't taught anything. He only knows what he knows, and he's going to be somebody that's willing to adjust on the fly. He's willing to intake and listen to different perspectives. He's willing to, hey, let's go on this path. Okay, this path isn't working. Let's just break that path off, throw that away, and let's go this way. Where you saw a guy like Darvin Ham, right? He could only go on this path, and every time he had to diverge from that path, it just fell apart. And you see that a lot. And look at the top 5 head coaches in the league, right? Most of them immediately became head coaches, right? You look at Eric Spoelstra came out of the film room. Even Jason Kidd went straight into, the Brooklyn Nets, right? You have so many of these coaches out there. Steve Kerr even. Steve Kerr was a failed GM and then commentator that came and became a head coach. And now look, right? A lot of these head coaches, Ty Lue, right? You can go down the list of guys that have came in and they just have the basketball mind. And no one's questioning JJ Redick's basketball mind. They're questioning, can he manage and operate from a head coaching standpoint, which is questions that I have as well, right? I've expressed my concerns about JJ Redick, and it's all can he, you have this checklist. He checks off every box except for, can he manage from a head coaching perspective? Because it's not just on the basketball court, it's behind the scenes, dealing with agents, dealing with organizations, dealing with players, managing egos, right? Like the list goes on and on and on of various little nuances that a head coach has to operate under. Well, to me, if you put the right pieces on the bench to help guide him, to help kind of balance out kind of what you're trying to do on both sides of the basketball, especially what's going on behind the scenes, all of those things, I think he can have a ton of success, continue to improve, continue to grow, and then eventually kind of maybe become a big name in head coaching. I don't know, right? JJ Redick is the biggest unknown, but to me, he also has the biggest upside, right? I think he is just so like he's low risk in the sense of like it's not going to cost you a ton compared to like if you got this like grand tier head coach, right? Like Ty Lue, you're probably going to have to pay 10 plus million a year, if not more, right? Like some of these head coaches now are getting 20 million a year. So it's like, all right, like if you're gonna do something like that, like you have to hit on that. And the Lakers do in a lot of ways have to hit on that. But if JJ Redick is right and you hit on JJ Redick, now you got your head coach. Like I've talked about it in the sense of like Greg Pop, right? Talk about Popovich, right? Not in the sense of accolades or, success. Obviously, JJ would have a long way to go before that, but in the sense of like, hey, now you got your foundation as a head coach for the next 20 plus years, and he isn't going anywhere, right? So we don't have to keep going through this coaching cycle. I prefer that personally. Ideally, that's what you want. You want to get a guy that, hey, he's going to be here for as long as he wants to be here, right? And to me, I think you solve so many things from a Lakers perspective, and then now you can start focusing on free agency and all that stuff. But getting into the assistants, right? Because the Lakers are trying to, again, put together this like super team of coaching staff. And so they're looking at bringing in James Borrego, who he has some head coaching experience, right? He's a guy that many people even want to be the head coach. He can come in, he's going to slot in, is again, the idea, get him in. And then also they want to bring in Sam Cassell. So you're kind of getting different outlooks, different perspectives, different coach trees, different basketball minds that are coming in from top teams that can kind of give different perspectives, different looks, different play calling, right? So you got somebody like, James Borrego is looked at as probably the offensive coordinator type guy. And then, have Sam Cassell as potentially on the defense side, help with some offense, right? Get some nice balanced attack. There's talks about bringing in Jared Dudley. Can they steal Jared Dudley from the Dallas Mavericks, bring him back on as, again, kind of that player coach? He was that for the Lakers in 2020 and had a lot of success. Again, he wasn't actually a coach on the bench, but like that was the first step, right? It's like as soon as he retired, boom, he got taken as an assistant because he was so good in that role. He was working with the coaches. He was helping out the coaches. He was dealing with the players, right? He was kind of the middleman for the Lakers. They kind of want that in the sense of like, hey, let's bring Dudley back. Again, he has a good relationship with LeBron and Anthony Davis and these guys, so he can kind of be that gap. He's well respected. He's a former player, right? It's just kind of okay, right? Like something that I've talked about in the past. If I'm not mistaken, I did a whole video about it like a long time ago. Was guys like Jared Dudley are so valuable, and even like JJ Redick, I think to an extent will be that because, right, like. You look at most players on a roster, right? Most of them are role guys. Most of them have never been the guy. Most of them have only been, maybe they've had some successes like, the third option or something like that on a team, or maybe for a moment they were the one guy on a bad team or whatever. But for the most part, okay, these guys are not the LeBrons, the Anthony Davis, right? More times than not on a roster, unless you're like Phoenix, you only have like two guys that are like elite. And then everyone else is like different tiers. Well, there's value in having a guy like a Jared Dudley who, yes, he's never been the guy. He's never been the star, but he's more relatable to more players, right? Like most players are probably intimidated to talk to LeBron about certain stuff, right? And there's some things that LeBron probably can't even really grasp because he's never been in that position, right? Like he's only given his perspective and outlook, but from like a non-situational standpoint, right? He's just looking at it as like, hey, yeah, I've seen these guys. Like he's using examples rather than like, no, I've been there. And there's a lot of value in that, right? Like, guy like a Jared Dudley, even a JJ Redick, guys that are respected, that are approachable, that are looked at as like, it's why guys, Tyronn Lue is a guy that, a lot of people talk and point to as like, hey, he is a very, you can speak to him, right? You can go to him. You can talk to him. He's a very player coach. Even guys like Doc Rivers, who I've never been a fan of Doc Rivers, but he keeps getting jobs. Why? Because players love him, right? Like he's had some disconnects with guys, but for the most part, he's looked at as a player's coach and stuff. And you need those kind of guys. So I do think a guy like a JJ Redick and particularly Jared Dudley do make a lot of sense being on that bench. And if I'm the Lakers, I'm getting back Phil Handy if you can. Obviously, the whole reason that they let him go was to, try to pursue better opportunities. If he can find that, then great, right? I obviously want the most success possible for anybody, right? Especially Phil Handy, who was a Laker, who, many of us in Lakers Nation, we love Phil Handy. And it's like, so if he can find more success elsewhere, then fine, go for it. I'm all for it. But if it's kind of like, hey, I'm just basically going to be the same thing anywhere else, come back here, right? Like, let's get you back on the bench. If you could have something like a Phil Handy, Jared Dudley, James Borrego, Sam Cassell, and JJ Redick on your bench, I think the Lakers are going to be very good. And I think now JJ Redick is in a great position to be just successful, right? Obviously, there's still going to be some questions. Obviously, there's still going to be some trial and error and stuff. But I do believe that he can have success with that type of bench. Now, we'll see if the Lakers are actually able to pull all that off. Sam Cassell has spoken heavily about how he wants a head coaching job, right? And the other idea, too, is that, like, if it doesn't work out with JJ Redick, well, now you have two guys on your bench that can immediately step in, right? So, like, let's say it's just a total disaster with JJ Redick. Well, now you can move Sam Cassell or James Borrego into that head coaching role, and you don't really lose any time of like, well, now what do we do, right? You already got two guys that you were high on that could have been head coaching or could have already been the head coach that you're just having step into that role. So I like the idea. I'm not against it. Again, it's not official, but I feel like it is. Again, maybe something changes between now and then, right? A lot can happen, but I think JJ Redick's ultimately going to be the head coach. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion. I pass a question on you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? What are your thoughts? Do you believe that, JJ Redick makes the most sense? Bring in JJ Redick. Do you think no? Stay away from him. Go with Sam Cassell. Go with Borrego. Whomever. However you feel, whatever your thoughts are, I'd love to hear it. So let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Helps me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribe channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.